Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from South Hadley, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Cohen. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, in this one of the churches is totally gone, so it's hard to lead a tour. But the other one, Highlands, one is still there, and so I can lead a tour.
And so today he'll be educating us on the Methodist Episcopal Church on Appleton Street.
Okay. Now, it has a long history that started when it was at the northeast corner of Chestnut Street and Appleton Street. There it started a Methodist Episcopal Church. A Methodist Episcopal Church is when the Episcopal Church first came to the United States from England, they didn't want to be a whole different system, and so they didn't call it the Episcopal Church right away. They wanted to have somewhat of the system of the Methodists, and so they joined with the Methodists to make their method. A method is a method of mass, a method of religion, of philosophy, in order to get a better religious outlook on life. And the Methodist Episcopal Church, it started in Baltimore, I believe, and by the time it came up to Holyoke, they were a very avid group. All right, so we're talking about the Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, they're so avid that in the beginning they just had a community of worshipers together, a parish, with absolutely no church. And this was from 1853. They were quite willing to meet in buildings around town or homes around town. They were, of course, a small group. It wasn't until the year 1868 that they developed their own church. And that first church was on Main Street at the corner of Appleton, at the southeast corner. And that building was finished in 1869 and ready for use. Now, it was small. I've seen a footprint of it on the Sanborn maps. It was a tiny building. But like you know, Holyoke kept growing and growing to a large extent. And so when the population grew and also moved uptown a bit, so didn't the church need to get a bigger place and go uptown or downtown in order to develop with the times. And by the year 1890, they developed their church on the corner, like I said, Appleton and Elm Street. Now, they kept growing and growing. Now, remember that this church wanted to grow with the times and move further up, but as people started to move up, they wanted to move up. And as people started to expand out of this church, they wanted to do that too. And so that was done, and what happened was they wanted to develop into the Highlands. And they started what was called a mission church up in the Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church. And that church was a home of a person. And if you look at it, the steeple that it has, beautiful wooden white steeple, extends up maybe second or third floor in height. And that gives it also the look of a church. So in 1885, they decided to build that church. In 1886, it was ready, and it was built, the Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church. By then, it wasn't even yet onto Appleton Street. It was still down on Main. But in 1890, they moved up to Main Street, and they now had two buildings going, both up much higher above the industrial part of Holyoke. And they were serving different populations. One population was the people in the Highlands tended to be moving up there because they were wealthier, and so it served a better lot of people. And it wanted, of course, things around it. So did it have a Sunday school inside? Yes, in both buildings they had Sunday school. Did it have a rectory for both of them? Yes. The one Downtown was just a slide along one of the big Victorian homes. And the one in the Highlands had built a house for itself just alongside of the Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church. That was on Lincoln Street, and the home directly to the east, or to the left as you look towards the church, is the former rectory.
So why was the Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church started?
It was started because they knew very well that the Highlands was forming. They had a great idea that there would be a trolley line up there. And for instance, in the early 1880s, they were already talking about getting this trolley going, and where it was going to be, first on Main Street, and then they said we're going to have it go upwards into the Highlands, though, because that was a place of great growth of residential locations. Of course, they're going to have other communities like Elm and so forth. So the Highlands Methodist Episcopal Church started because they knew that the population was going to move outwards. And they also knew that they were still down on Main Street. They would outgrow that very quickly. It was a tiny place. And they not only went to the Highlands, they went upwards to Chestnut and Appleton. And they built a bigger church for themselves there, which was still their central location.
So quickly before we continue with the rest of the interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And then here's both videos of the various stops along each tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, @yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. They're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. Getting back to the interview, what church did the Highlands Methodist Church turn into?
Okay, it turned into the Church of Christian Science, which had been started in Boston. It was the only denominational church that was ever started in Massachusetts. And this group wanted to have a place to be. And it was able to move into this place because it was being given up by the Church in the Highlands, which was stopped in 1926. Remember, that started in 1886. At that point, they were taken over, and from 1926 to well deep into the 1980s, it was the first Church of Christian Scientists of Holyoke, Mother Church in Boston, of course. And its rectory was changed to a point along Cleveland Street, and it was called a reading hall, and that's only because they read the scriptures there. But thus it stayed a church for 100, maybe 100, 200, 3 years. That's incredible. It hardly looks like a church, but it's one of the most important churches in Holyoke. Now, even then, the church started to break apart, the people, of course, because the Church of Christian Science wasn't as well attended about that time. And if you don't have enough people going to Mass, then you're not going to have a church to pay for.
So, what church did the Appleton Street Methodist Church turn into?
All right. That one, by the mid-1980s, had changed into the United Methodist Church of South Hadley. They had gotten out of Holyoke. They took that church down, in fact. That's why it's not there anymore. And they took over a Methodist church, or united with a Methodist church that was already in South Hadley, the first Methodist church of South Hadley. And they called it the Methodist Church, United Methodist Church. And that continued and is still there. I've gone to Mass there, the Methodist Church. It's a white building that used to be the Congregational Church. And they still follow the scriptures the way the Methodists have all along. So thus it was changed from a Methodist Episcopal Church into a unified Methodist Church, which is no big deal because that's what the Methodist Episcopals were all about all along.
Well, thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours, and we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. You can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website, Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com.